How to kill lust the easy way starts by making temptation weaker. Instead of trying to become stronger, most people fight at the wrong moment. Today, I'll show you how to win before the battle even begins. Number one, stop feeding the monster. Most people think lust is a random urge that appears out of nowhere, but lust usually doesn't begin in the moment you feel tempted. It starts hours earlier, sometimes even days earlier. And this is where most Christians and most men completely misunderstand the battle. They focus on what happens during temptation, but ignore what's happening before temptation. You don't usually wake up one day and suddenly fall into lust for no reason. There's usually a build-up, a pattern, a slow feeding process. What you watch, what you scroll, what you allow your mind to sit on, what conversations you entertain, what songs, images, fantasies, or environments quietly planting seeds in your mind. Many people are unknowingly feeding the very thing that they're praying to escape from, and because it happens subtly, they don't even realize it. Imagine owning a dangerous dog that becomes more aggressive every single time you feed it. Every meal makes it stronger. Every snack increases its energy. Every reward trains it to return. Now you imagine you keeping feeding that dog every day, but then at night you suddenly try to wrestle it. That's how many people fight lust. They feed it all day, then they try to defeat it at night. The problem isn't that the dog is too strong. The problem is that you've been strengthening it for hours. Lust works the same way. The more you entertain temptation mentally, the stronger it becomes emotionally. And by the time the urge arrives, you're already fighting something you've unknowingly grown. The easiest way to kill lust is to stop feeding it, because starving the temptation is easier than overpowering temptation. This changes the battle completely. Instead of asking, how do I resist when temptation comes? You start asking, what am I feeding that makes temptation stronger? When you stop feeding lust, your urges begin losing intensity, your mind becomes cleaner, your triggers become weaker, your thoughts become less chaotic, and most importantly, temptation stops feeling overwhelming. Psalm 101:3 says, I will set nothing wicked before my eyes. That verse is not just spiritual advice, it's strategy, because what you repeatedly place before your eyes eventually shapes what fills your mind. Practical steps. Here's how you apply this. Immediately audit your social media feed. Remove accounts that trigger lust. Stop watching entertainment that consistently sexualizes everything. Stop scrolling late at night. Replace your phone time with something more productive like reading. Strengthen your mind and stop revisiting memories or fantasies that reopen temptation. You need fewer things feeding the struggle, because the easier part isn't becoming stronger overnight. It's making lust weaker every day. You don't defeat what you keep feeding. If you're serious about finally breaking free from lust, I created a practical Christian ebook that walks you through exactly how to escape this cycle step by step. It's designed to help you build a real freedom, not temporary motivation. The link is in the description below. But even if you stop feeding lust, there's still something that can quietly pull you back. And this next point is where most people accidentally sabotage themselves. Point number 2, make temptation inconvenient. Most people rely too heavily on self-control. They believe the answer is simply becoming mentally stronger. But here's the problem. Your willpower changes depending on your energy. When you're tired, your discipline drops. When you're lonely, your emotions rise. When you're stressed, your decision making weakens. That means even strong people can feel when temptation is too accessible. Many people keep lust within arm's reach. Their phone sits beside them at bed. They stay isolated late at night. They leave themselves in environments that make them relapse easily. Then they blame themselves for lacking discipline. But the truth is, easy access creates easy failure. Imagine trying to stop eating junk food while keeping candy everywhere in your house. It's on the counter, it's in the fridge, next to your bed, inside your car. Even if you're motivated, eventually temptation becomes exhausting to resist. Now imagine removing all of it. Suddenly, the cravings don't disappear, but access changes, and that small change makes resisting dramatically easier. Loss works the same way. The easier temptation is to access, the harder it becomes to resist. The easy way to kill loss is not trusting yourself too much, it's creating barriers. People often think barriers mean weakness, but barriers are wisdom. You don't create guardrails because you're weak, you create guardrails because you value where you're going. The goal isn't proving how strong you are, the goal is making temptation harder to reach. When temptation becomes inconvenient, your success rate rises dramatically. Matthew 26:41 says, "Watch and pray for that you will not fall into temptation." It doesn't say survive temptation. It says watch and pray, meaning preparation matters, awareness matters, prevention matters. Practical steps. Here's how to make temptation inconvenient. Charge your phone outside of the bedroom. Install blockers on your devices. Avoid staying awake late with no purpose. Keep doors open when you're alone if possible. Avoid isolated environments that usually trigger relapse. Create evening routines that remove idle time. The easier part isn't proving you can resist temptation. The easier part is making temptation harder to access. Discipline gets easier when temptation gets farther away. But even if you remove triggers and make temptation harder to reach, there's still one hidden reason many people keep returning to lust. And this next point is deeper than habits. Point number 3, replace the need, not just the behavior. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing lust is only physical, but many times lust isn't about desire, it's about escape. People use lust to cope with loneliness, stress, anxiety, rejection, boredom, emptiness. When life feels heavy, lust offers temporary relief. That's why people often relapse after difficult days, not because temptation randomly appeared, but because they needed comfort, and lust became the shortcut. Imagine someone who constantly eats unhealthy food every time they feel stressed. The food isn't the real problem, the stress is the food. Simply became the coping mechanism. If they only focus on removing food without replacing how they handle stress, they'll eventually return to old habits. That's exactly how loss works. You can remove behavior temporarily, but if you never address what emotional need it was filling, the habit often returns. The easy way to kill lust is replacing the emotional need behind it, because lust often becomes a false source of comfort, and until you find healthier replacement, your brain keeps returning to familiar escape. You don't just remove temptation, you remove what temptation was doing for you. This is where many people finally begin experiencing real change, because they stop fighting symptoms and start healing causes. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." That means you don't have to numb pain. You can bring pain somewhere safe. God doesn't just want behavior change, He wants healing. Practical steps. Ask yourself these questions. What emotion usually comes before temptation? What am I trying to escape? When do I feel most vulnerable? What healthy action could replace that feeling? Then begin building replacements. Go for a walk when the urges arise. Journal your thoughts. Pray honestly instead of suppressing emotion. Call a friend. exercise, create routines that regulate your mind. Freedom becomes easier when you stop using lust to solve emotional pain. Lust often grows where emotional wounds stay hidden. But there's still one final shift that makes all of this easier, because even if you understand your triggers, remove access, and replace unhealthy coping, you can still stay stuck if you miss this last point. And if you're interested in that, watch this video right in front of me right